The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. There are people out there all across the country pushing boundaries to grow the game of golf. Like champion speed golfer Lauren Cupp, who plays faster than anyone else. And Will Lowry, whose work in the golf community inspires more kids to get into the game. As a champion partner of the Masters, Bank of America supports everyone determined to find out what's possible in golf and in life. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC, copyright 2025, Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the Football Historian Podcast.
By all means, enjoy it.
He will go right to the very top.
Dos, tres, cuatro times.
Here we go, Germans.
I will turn these results round.
All right, that's good manners.
There's animosity, but there's no fight.
You can't beat them, join them.
How do you make me feel sick if I look at you?
No, I want to fight here.
Don't drink, don't sleep with women, don't drive fast cars.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit too!
Hello, welcome to the Football Historian Podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by David Fairclough. Thank you so much for coming along. I really do appreciate it. We've had quite a few former players in, some from around your era. We've had like Howard Gale and Phil Borsman have been in. This is the Football Historian Podcast. I like to talk about a different era of the game, and obviously, you know, the game's come a long way since when you were scoring goals against Saint-Etienne and the super sub stuff. It's all stuff you've done a million times, so I'll try and ask you different questions, but I'm sure we will come on to Saint-Etienne and stuff like that. But I want to start at the very beginning in that. What are your earliest memories of football?
Playing in the street, you know, all where I lived and grew up. It was seems to be the only well, not that I made a conscious thing, but football. We were just surrounded by football. I lived very close to Anfield, in a 2-up 2-down terraced house. My mother said as soon as I could walk, she has memory of me just kicking a ball. So it just seemed the obvious thing to do. One of my very earliest memories is if not my earliest memory, is my mum telling me my dad had gone to London to watch Liverpool play Leyton Orient in the run up to when they won the league championship. I think it was 59, 61, wasn't it? So that seemed to be my, football just seems to be the obvious. It was there, surrounded by it.
And obviously you've played through some eras of football, watching it today, say punditry into what we're doing now. What do you think is the best era of football, like a 10-year, 5-year gap, something like that?
The 70s was fantastic, I think, for football. I heard something yesterday, and people, so Tony Curry and Rodney Marsh were brought into a conversation, and he said the fact there's only two, the only two you can think of. Well, it got me thinking. I think you could think of every team. They had a player of that type of, whether it was Hudson or Keegan or, I mean, every team had players. There weren't just two outstanding sort of ball players, but the 70s was full of ball players. And I mean, on the pitches, obviously, that you were sort of presented with, then, I mean, it took some, it took great ability to become a football great and then be playing on the pitches that you're playing on. I think deserves a little bit of credit. But I think football in this day and age is nowhere near. And I had, again, a couple of conversations over the last few days. Football's become too strategic, and the thrill is not there. VAR is obviously playing a big part in things, but players don't seem to be able to think for themselves anymore. They have to be told what to do. They have to be told where to go, who to mark, and if things happen in a game that they've not been made aware of previously or prior to the game, they don't know how to react. And so for that reason, I don't find football of this age actually that stimulating, if I'm totally honest.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can keep reflecting and we'll go to your top 5 players of all time. If you got them, if you can go 5 to 1, sorry, to make it a bit more exciting, but if you just name 5, that's more than good.
Well, I was brought up at a time when Pelé was the king, and as always in my eyes remains, he is the king. He was the one, perhaps, and when as I was growing up, you didn't get a great deal of TV coverage of football, but somehow you were made aware of, things that they were doing, whether or not it was pictures or a little bit of news snippets and all those type of things. Pelé was very much an idol, and I read a lot about football, read an awful lot of football annuals and reviews and all those type of things. And I was lucky enough when I was 9 to go and see Pelé play in the World Cup. Maybe it wasn't his greatest summer of his career, but still no, saw him live. I later met him some years later, briefly as it was. But huge thrill, and to me always remained the number one. I think if you're thinking of the top 5, then obviously you think of Cruyff. Cruyff was something special, and I think as you perhaps think of what their legacy was, Pelé was hugely influential. Pelé was doing things that players have done since, and people sort of rave about. Pelé was doing these type of things in the late 50s and early 60s. So he left a legacy. Cruyff left a legacy in the way that he played. Yeah. His style was great to watch, and the influence he's had on coaching and systems down the years. I think Cruyff, is very much in that.
Yeah, I think weren't you on the bench once when he played against you as well?
In Barcelona.
So, yeah, so was he? Did you appreciate him more, being at pitch level watching him, or was it just as brilliant as you thought?
No, always. The first time you seen the Cruyff turn in the '74 World Cup, you thought, what's that? I got to perfect that, So to have something, to leave something behind like the Cruyff turn, I think is that's a lovely little memory. Yeah. I was inspired by. We used to copy footballers. That's how you learnt in years gone by. You didn't have to be sort of not so much shown. Kids go on soccer camps and all this type of thing, and coaches are telling them how to do this and how to do that. We've seen things firsthand. Pelé sort of trying to score from the halfway line against Uruguay. Yeah. It was Czechoslovakia. So you copied it. You went and tried things in the street, and then he had the moment against Uruguay later in the '70 World Cup. So by seeing little snippets of things, that inspired you to go out and to do it. You didn't have to be taught it. You'd seen it, and now you're going to sort of do it.
Yeah. Who else should be in your top 5?
George Best.
Yep.
Yeah, George Best was amazing, and to think that he was obviously he's from Britain was I think it is a huge statement to. It's a shame that obviously he didn't fulfil his career in the way that he should have done, but he left enough memories behind to sort of to judge his greatness. And I think when I was a kid, he was one of the early ones that had sort of. I used to like running with the ball and dribbling with the ball. That was my sort of. That was the fun of playing football. And the way he wriggled and went one way and the other way, and sort of had controlled the ball with both feet. Was something I I think I kind of mastered, I would like to say.
Yeah.
He was a large inspiration for that, I think.
Yeah. Go on, who's next?
I think I'd probably throw in Beckenbauer. I think Franz Beckenbauer sort of reinvented the position. I mean, he was a midfield player when I watched him in '66. But he was a very good midfield player. Could get forward and score goals, and then later, created the libero, or brought the libero position into sort of kind of to the worldwide audience. It wasn't until Beckenbauer you saw Beckenbauer in his pomp did people realise what the role was, that how to play it and what he'd created, and then later on he went to obviously to make his reputation as a manager, winning World Cup, European Cup,
not bad.
Did everything, yeah. And the police met him once as well, which was a nice moment. I think you remember these things when you're
meeting the greats,
when you meet the all-time greats.
Last name,
probably Maradona, I would say.
Yep.
I think you have to. Obviously, in South America, there's this great Brazil-Argentina rivalry, and Argentina were always going to they had to find somebody who could actually rival, Brazil's status as being the kings of football kind of thing. And Maradona was awesome. And considering he only played with 1 foot, which goes against all my kind of things that I admire in football, if I'm totally honest. But to play that well with 1 foot, I think was genius, and his influence on all the the successes that he was a part of. Obviously, Barcelona, and then he goes to Italy and Napoli. The success he had with Napoli was inspirational. Napoli had never achieved anything prior to that, and it was the Maradona effect that created their success, and then obviously then the things that he did with Argentina, which is
bad time as well. Yeah, when he say he's basically a god, he's not a man in Napoli, and he is held highly the murals of him, and all those people there, as you say, we've had some top 5s with other people. I think that's possibly one of the best 5 in terms of ability and legacy as well, which I think is obviously equally as important. But we'll go on to your playing career. An all-time 5-a-side team of players you've played with. Feel free to put yourself in there if you want.
I wouldn't be. I'd like to be on the sidelines, thinking they might throw me on for a couple of minutes to use the how I'm kind of thought of. But Clemens would be in goal. I think Emlyn Hughes and Hansen would make up a sort of say a defensive kind of a defensive theme in a team, but equally had the ability to really play. Emlyn Hughes, I was a great fan of Emlyn Hughes. When he came into Liverpool, into the Liverpool group in the '60s. I mean, I was very much a fan, and I'd grown up with the Shankly 11 or 12 that won the cup in '65 and the leagues in '66. So to think that somebody then could come in and break into that group was at the time you thought you couldn't imagine it. And Emlyn Hughes duly arrived as a sort of marauding midfield player, stroke fullback. Loved Emlyn Hughes, loved his style and everything about it. And then by the time I sort of arrive at Liverpool, he's the captain. I was very fortunate then to become a friend of his and all those type of things. I mean, he's like kind of a sort of one of those legendary sort of. I think to be fair, I don't think he's remembered enough in Liverpool's history. There's the statue of Paisley at by the shop, and Emily Hughes is on his back. But I mean, Emily Hughes should have a statue. I mean, and that's nice that Emily is involved in that moment in history. But personally, as a Liverpool fan, I think Emily Hughes has not been. I don't think there's been justice to his legacy, and to the part that he played, and how great he was. So Emily Hughes, Alan Hansen, obviously, I remain mates with Alan. So a little bit of kind of, let's say, bias towards. But Alan was a great footballer. I mean, a couple of some weeks ago, somebody asked me to sort of say, he said to his son, this lad, a guy said to me to address his son, how good was Hansen? He said, how's he compare with Van Dijk? I personally think Hansen there's not a. I don't think there's a doubt. Hansen for me was better than Van Dijk. Yeah. This chap thought the same. I mean, you had to see Alan at his height. I mean, he was amazing. So he would always be in there. Souness, because I'm a huge fan and a huge friend. We were neighbours, next door neighbours. So I got to know Graham very well. I'm in touch with Graham regularly, and our admiration for Suey is, anybody who played with Graham, I think, would respects his presence, his style, his attitude, and what he gave, and everything. He would be a great. He would be a massive. He would be a massive part of any team that he was a part of. And then up front, probably throw Rushy in, because Rushy just sort of like, he knew how to prod in a goal or two, and I say. With Alan, I mean, I'm lucky enough to still be mates with the likes of him, Suey, and Rushy, see him most weeks. So that would be my 5.
I'd already say someone's just got injured and you bring on a super sub, and I feel like the most apt time to say it. But would you be your super sub, or is there someone else you bring on?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't underestimate what I could achieve, but maybe some people would have their doubts because they've never seen me play. But no, I mean, you could pick, like Sir Kevin Keegan or Kenny. They would be great. They would be great to be sort of waiting in the wings. Kenny Kevin was great energy. We played a lot of 5-a-sides in our day, and Kenny had a certain ability in those small-sided games. A lot of it is made about how Kenny could hold on to the ball and protect it, and then bring people into play on the side. Kevin's style in 5-a-side was very much all energy based, all very a lot of enthusiasm, and he wriggled and fought, and he had great qualities, Kevin. And he'd make a good 5 for that. He'd make a good 5-side player.
Yeah, because okay, right. Well, what we always do here as well is a debate.
The debate,
where we try and settle some of the biggest debates in football history. So I'll give you a couple of questions. You just want to give me one word answer, but feel free to explain. It's fine. Just we're trying to settle them. So the first one is Gerrard, Lampard, and Scholes. Could you put them in order for us?
Gerrard, number 1. Probably Scholes, Lampard.
Yep.
I would say.
Yep. Gerrard's winning by quite a way, but I think that's maybe because of where I'm based.
Well, I think there's no doubt in how great Gerrard was. Yeah. I mean, Stevie, and I'm lucky enough, I was with him just a couple of days ago, actually. But I'm a huge admirer of Steven Gerrard. Yeah. Amazing.
Okay, great. Well, next up then is Pele or Maradona.
Pele.
Yep. You obviously explained how much you like him, but the next one then we'll go on to is Messi or Ronaldo.
I would probably go strangely, I'd go for Ronaldo.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
Messi's winning by quite a way, so is there a reason why Ronaldo's better for you?
I think his effectiveness, I think his versatility, I would say, has a little bit more sort of I can appreciate Messi. I can appreciate Messi's ability, and maybe I just think. I think probably the switches me. I think Ronaldo's the versatility that he could, and how he has the goals that perhaps he scored stick longer in my mind than
Messi.
the other way.
Well, and if they're the best two players of the last 10, 15 years, who would you put behind them two?
Very, and I thought about this and thought, who falls into? I mean, people like the Spanish team dominated. In the likes of Xavi and Iniesta. They were. I mean, hugely influential, and I think have left I find it hard to divide them. They're like they're like a Bremner and Giles of the 60s and 70s. So they sort of jump. The players of that sort of style jump. Jump out at me.
Okay, that's good. And then the next one would be club or country. So I know we said, would you rather win the league for your club or win the World Cup for your country? What would you have rather done?
Oh, winning the league was. I'm really proud. I'm really proud. And I said a few months ago, spent a lot of time with, reasonable amounts of time with Phil Neal. But there's a picture of when we won the league against Wolves in '76, and you look at it, and I said to Phil one day, I said, "Can you ever remember being as happy as that?" I mean, and it's hard to sort of put happiness on a scale of, however you judge it. But I mean, we couldn't have been happier to win the league title, and I'm doing it obviously for both he and me. It was our first season in Liverpool's team, and to win the league is just something like. It is the old dream. You could only dream of something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've done that as well. You got to do it. Next one then would be the most overrated player of all time. Have you got a name for that?
Not really. When I think of overrated players, I tend to think of kind of some of the England teams of recent times. How some players have got big reputations, and people look back and think not so much. Maybe people in the street, but I don't know. Sometimes. I think overrated. I mean, as much as so I think back to maybe the England teams of let's say the 80s, and people like Shilton I thought was slightly overrated. He wasn't as good as Clemens in my eyes. Yeah. Stuart Pearce, for example, always comes to me. I always think like, what was the fuss about Stuart Pearce? Might be a bit wicked. I know he's won an awful lot of England caps, and it's not to disrespect them totally, but I sometimes think that players. I think we can all be judged that way. I think people can look back and you can remember the past with rose-tinted glasses, and not see maybe people's sort of shortcomings. And sometimes you look at players and think, really, was that? Was he that?
How did you get?
Was he that good?
Yeah. All right, well, maybe a nicer one for you then is the most underrated player of all time.
Well, I think only in sort of most underrated. It was difficult to sort of say the most. I never really ever thought that Jimmy Case had the reputation that he should have got, and I think it's only in the past. Yeah, or it's only in recent years people say, I think Jimmy played for 40, till he was like 40, 41. Yeah. I knew Jimmy as a schoolboy, we came across each other as schoolboys, and I've always admired Jimmy Case's role in what he did for Liverpool, and so it's kind of easy to sort of say maybe even think people think of Phil Neal. Phil Neal is it was amazing. I mean, in recent weeks and months I've had conversations with one or two people. Phil Neal played over 400 games consecutively without missing a game. And how do you do that? None of this sort of feeling tired or got a little bit of stiffness and one thing. He must have felt tired and stiff somewhere along the way. So I'm a huge admirer of Phil Neal. I mean that's keeping it close to home, but I mean there's a wider, there's a wider argument and discussion there. I think, but I mean two names who jump into my, I think to myself that. Phil Neal should be remembered as an all-time great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then the last couple on the debates then that would be who is the greatest manager of all time?
Bill Shankly. Yeah. No hesitation. Shankly was awesome. I mean, to be around Shankly, grow up and watch Liverpool in the 60s, and one thing that Shankly was God. I mean, it was always, you picked up on as I said earlier, you didn't have the same TV coverage and all that type of stuff. So, but the snippets and bits of life that you got about Shankly, and I was often, like most of my school holidays, I spent at Anfield, sort of collecting autographs and wanting to sort of come in contact with the players and Bill Shankly. And Shankly was God. I mean, he was awesome. And then to be later sort of identified and to play against him in little practice games as a schoolboy, and then be identified as a potential sort of signing and one thing. Shankly was amazing.
Yeah, I think most people who have come in close contact with them certainly hold him very highly, and obviously the Liverpool fans do as well. But as time goes on, maybe his legacy gets lost a little bit. But I think he's definitely not forgotten.
Well, you could not fail to any moment that you spent with Shankly, and I've met many people down the years who maybe met Shankly just once, and they remember the words that he said to them. I mean, for passion and enthusiasm and charisma and presence. I mean, I don't think I've met anybody that sort of made such an impact on me.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last one then would be, who's the greatest team of all time? So not like a 1 to 11, but like an actual team from an era. So like, we've had the Brazil team in the World Cup, whatever, stuff like that. Who's the greatest?
Well, they were great. I mean, the thing about the Brazil team of 70s, I mean, most people can remember the front five as such, 5 or 6. No one remembers the defence because they were outstanding, and if you were fortunate to watch them in the 70s, then they were. I think they would always be in the forefront of people's minds. The Brazil team of '82 was a fantastic team. I mean, everybody's favourite to win the World Cup. And it was kind of freakish that how they were beaten by Italy in the quarterfinal, I think it was. So they were a great side, and the Dutch team of like '78, which many people would struggle to sort of to name, but I mean around that time, '74, '78, Dutch were up there with the best teams. Yeah. Around, like Cruyff, Neyskins, Krol, and all number of others, Johnny Rep. I mean, they were outstanding Dutch, and I think we were influenced certainly because that's the time when I'm kind of trying to make my way through football. I have to say, when I look back and think of Holland, I think they were largely the team that sort of kind of inspired.
Yeah,
it played a big part of inspiring me.
Yeah, well, I've seen you named your all-time 11 of players you played against, and there was a lot of Dutch influence in there, so I can certainly see that. That certainly had an impact on.
Springfest deals are still in full swing at Lowe's. Right now, get 5 bags of Stay Green Premium Color 2 cubic foot mulch for only $10. And get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, save up to $300 when you buy 2 or more select GE kitchen appliances of $396 or more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/16, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location while supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details and qualifying items.
Yeah. Right, we'll go into your career a bit more specifically now, if that's okay. So, you've mentioned Bill Shankly. You obviously never got to play under him, but you met him, I think, when you signed your first contract. And you have said the story is you and your dad, you go into the manager's office with him and Tom Saunders. For being a fan, as you say there, he's the greatest manager you've ever seen, and you never played professionally under him. Just meeting him that first time, and as you say, people always remember the first time they met him. What was that like? What was he like with you? And was he an imposing figure or a welcoming figure for you?
Well, I played under I played in the reserves under Shankly. Obviously, didn't play in the first team. I said this to somebody very recently. I never had the conversation with my dad because my dad was a huge, big Liverpool fan. In a good way, a nice, calm way. I never got to ask my dad just sort of, what do you think the day we walked into Shank's office and signed apprentice kind of thing. I'd been to Anfield, hundreds of times, as I say, spend the school holidays there, collecting autographs and one thing and another. And thought of him as a, untouchable kind of thing. When I was a young, as I'm coming through the sort of, I've signed Liverpool as a schoolboy form. But in school holidays, when you got to about 15, they would invite some kid in school holidays to come in and spend a couple of days training, just see what it was going to be like. The ones maybe who they had in mind to be apprentices, just to see what the system was like, the environment was like. And in those days, you then got the opportunity to play against the coaches at the end of the training session. So you've done your sessions and done your training with your groups that you're in, your age groups or reserves or whatever. And then the coaches then got a team together. It was Bob Paisley, Ruben Bennett, Bill Shankly, Jeff Twinterman, Ronnie Moran, Joe Fagan. So they played a group of the young kids. Shanks always played in this sort of like, he played as a number 4. He played in these games in this little position that was, you would expect him to play like a right midfield sort of thing. And one of my moments, I played in this game and I remember it forever. We were doing quite well. It was 5-5 in the game. Remember it? And the next goal's the winner because the game's gone on a little bit and it's got to end at some point. And they're thinking that they're going to obviously nick the goal, as they had a habit of doing. I saw Shanks and I just knew what he was going to do. He was very right-footed, and I just knew he'd do his body shape and everything, and I knew he was going to play it sort of across field, and I intercepted it. I was there, got it, and then lobbed Bob Paisley, who was in goal. He couldn't really jump very high anyway because he had bad angles. He was furious, Shanks. He was absolutely furious. And I think they tried to claim that the game had to go on. It had to finish, unfortunately. But it wasn't the moment that they would have. And down the years, I've thought of memories of different goals and one thing, and that's one of my sort of outstanding memories of a goal that I scored, intercepting the ball from Shanks as he's tried a crossfield, felt like Andy Robertson on Sunday, and I knew where it was going. He didn't hit it to me. I could see him thinking he's going to hit it across here. And then I went and intercepted it, and then lobbed Bob Paisley from about 20 yards. And I felt the anger because he was furious. There were a few there were a few expletives and all this type of thing, and that sort of stands out as one of the memories of my kind of it's very much the early moments of meeting Bill Shankly. Later on, I signed, obviously, as an apprentice, and then we go on to, I say, being invited in with my dad to sign. And then you remember the odd little thing. I remember him one afternoon coming up to me at the end of the season before he retired. And he said to me, he said, next season, he said, you're going to be the outside left for the reserves. And you think to yourself, wow, and it was a nice moment to kind of go away through the summer and think that Shanks now was sort of, he sort of pulled you aside and said, what he's got mapped out, kind of a little bit of what he's mapped out for me. And he said, next season, you'll be outside left for the reserves. And you think to yourself, that's great. That's a great confidence thing. I used to go home to, I was, at that time, I was living in Cantrell Farm. And, I had a group of friends and stuff like that who hung on every word, would come home and say, who did you speak to today? And who did you, and I'd be telling little snippets of what Kevin Keegan said, or, Kevin said to Tosh, or whatever, what I'd overheard, or any part that anything had said. And you relay these little stories to my mates, and they were like, they were amazed, and the company that I was sort of like keeping at that time, it was an incredible time to come through.
Well, it must be a hard, exciting but hard transition from fan to teammate with obviously these people, as you say, you grew up loving Emlyn Hughes and then you're playing big matches with them not long after. That period as well, as you say there, Shankly goes, Paisley comes in, it's quite a transitional period. There's a play on at the moment, Red or Dead, I'm sure you've seen it, watched it recently. Obviously it covers what Shankly was like after he retired, and that he retired but was still at Liverpool. What was that like, obviously you being there? Was it a bit awkward that he was still hanging around, or did you all just love him so much it didn't feel weird, or how was it for you as a player?
Like everybody else, we heard the news in those days, via radio, and I remember being on the I think I was on the Queen's Drive, actually. The day I did on the radio, and like Bill Shankly, retired, and there was a, incredible, like, you sure, this kind of thing. And we had to we were obviously a few days away from returning for training, so it sort of came as a massive shock to the city, but I haven't seen the play yet. I mean, strangely, I'm in the Royal Court on Thursday for something else, and I've been invited. I was invited in. I am due to see it, and I'm interested to see it. And as much as I know how the thing was put together, and at one point, I mean, I know the people in the Royal Court, and I was kind of asked for some sort of direct sort of information about actually what one or two things happened. So I'm tempted to. I'm a bit sort of. I'm holding back judgment on it, and I think having read some of the Leeds story by the same writer, original writer, and then I know when the Liverpool book came out, speaking to a few of the the old players, they didn't believe that some of the things that he said that that didn't happen on one thing. So I'm a little bit sort of guarded as to how some of the story sort of unfolds. And I've heard a little bit of a snippet, and I think it didn't happen like that. So I won't say what it was, but I was there at the time. And we came in for the start of the season, and on the first day of the season, Bob Paisley has been the accepted format. A year earlier, Shanks had done this same thing, but Bob Paisley comes in on his first morning. And he looked around, and the dressing room's full, and there's apprentices there, and there's all the reserves and first team and everybody. And Bob Paisley stands there and says, I don't know what you're all looking at me for. He said, I didn't want the job in the first place. And there was a kind of a gasp as to sort of, wow, obviously you'd want to be Liverpool manager. And I think I think somewhere down the line there's a tale that he did want it, and he kind of he accepted it in a way that showed that he wanted the job. But anyway, he says he had doubts about taking the job at that moment. So we got the boss now. He is now the boss. He'd always been Bob, to everybody, and he had he was a respected guy as part of the thing, and he had his role, and everybody had their thoughts on, how he handled that role that he did. So now he's the boss. And you go out for training and one thing and another, and you go outside even on that first morning, and Shanks is there in his kit, still in his like nothing's happened. Yeah. And then we had training sessions, and Shanks was wandering around down Melwood. And then the next day, we got down there. We come down on the coach, arrive about 10:30. Shanks is already there. He's come down by car, in his kit. Morning, boys. Morning, boss. There's two bosses now. It was very strange. And then there was different moments. He'd be on the pitch. He'd be wandering around the pitches while training was going on, I remember him coming up to me one morning and saying, "How you doing, son?" And it was beginning to, after, I don't know exactly how many days, it was a few days of it, a week or two maybe. And some of the players are saying, what's he doing? Is he here again, kind of thing. And they were losing a little bit of sort of reverence to him. Whereas, it's like what's he doing? What's he doing here again? Someone's got to tell him that, there's two bosses, kind of thing. You can't call him anything else but boss.
Yeah.
So it was a very awkward time, very, very awkward time. And actually, how the message is delivered is probably is maybe open to interpretation.
Yeah, which obviously it has been interpreted one way in that play and whatever. But as you say, that is a bit weird. It's like, obviously you say he's an absolute legend. You've said he's the best manager you've ever seen. He's held so highly, but then to still be going there, like, what was he expecting from that? It's strange, as you say. But obviously, whether
I've got some tapes of his that were reproduced, and I don't know. I was telling them down the Royal Court some months ago, and they said, "Oh, I'd love to hear those type of things." And he tells us, and they were recorded by a guy from Radio Merseyside. It's brilliant. It's inspiring. It's unbelievable, actually. I mean, first time I listened to them, I was in a hot sweat. I mean, literally, never felt that way about anything before. Listening to him, it's recorded in a very simplistic way, and he tells he tells things about Liverpool and the players and the characters and all those type of things. And then at the end, he talks about what his his thoughts were towards how we finished and what he would have liked to have done. And it's very sad and at the end, and it shouldn't have finished the way that it did. But I think he my conclusion is he made the wrong decision. In his own mind, he made the wrong decision. And if anybody had had a little bit of hindsight, with hindsight, somebody should have stayed around and said to him, had they wanted that, I said, Bill, just sort of like sit back for a couple of months and let's just see, how things unfold, rather than sort of accepting the resignation automatically, kind of thing, because that was it was a huge. I've got a picture of the day I signed as an apprentice, as a professional. I'm 17. Shank is about 60, probably about 64, 66, something. He didn't look ready to pack in at the time. I mean, it's huge moment for me, but 6 months later from taking of this picture, he packs it. He wasn't a man ready to call it a day. It's so sad.
Altogether, yeah. But we'll go on to you. You are obviously a footballer as well, not just someone who played under them. You got a few nicknames in your time. Not going to use the obvious one. Bionic Carrot. That was one. Why were you called that? Where did that come from? And did you like that one?
I think that was just, in the like all things, media is kind of media talk. I mean, and when you're looking for highlight, headlines, ginger haired, the redheaded, the this, the that. So at some point, someone has got to come up with something different, and then that's just a headline, headline writers sort of moment, bionic carrot. It never ever stuck, kind of thing. But obviously, I've heard it down the years. No one's ever called me as such. Maybe the odd time in jest.
Yeah. So was there a nickname that you had within the dressing room that you were called?
Most people could call me, well, I'm known as Whip.
Yeah.
So I don't think Kenny Dalgley's ever called me Dave. I'm Sasui, I'm the Whip. Ronnie Whelan, Hanson, anybody. And, very rare times would anybody have called me anything that resembles Dave, David, or Davey, or whatever. I'm the Whip, yeah.
The Whip, yeah. They still go by that when you meet them all now? Do you still call that?
Yeah, I'm still called the Whip. I mean, players who didn't play with me, players who didn't play in my generation, people like Mark Walters, Steve Staunton, for example, Steve McMahon, and people like everyone. I'm just in Liverpool circles. I'm the whip, yeah.
The whip, and still. There's a picture of you dressed as a cowboy. I believe you said Paisley described you as his Lone Star Ranger. Is that correct?
One day, against Coventry, we were in the. It was a League Cup replay. So he called me. The way we were going to play, we were going to basically keep it tight at the back. Kenny was going to be a little bit deeper, and I was going to be the Lone Star Ranger, not the Lone Ranger, the Lone Star Ranger up front, and it worked. And then obviously, you see for shooting. In those days, players took, the press would come up with all kinds of mad ideas, and players were quite happy to partake in it. You down the years, you've seen, maybe, I don't know, historical pictures of, Kevin and Tosh, Batman and Robin, and all that. And players would get dressed up and just for a laugh, you know what I mean? You take the next morning when the picture comes out, you get the mickey taken out of you by the boys. But players seem to be very, happy in those days to take part. I don't think footballers these days sort of take themselves as sort of as sort of
a bit too serious.
They're a bit very serious about themselves and their egos and how they're projected.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe in more modern times, they're famous for having fancy dress parties. Was that still happened in your day? And was there any good parties like that you're allowed to mention these stories?
No, but. They just changed the parties. There was always a Christmas party, like every club has some sort of Christmas celebration. I think they're far greater and grander these days. But all of a sudden, I think when the group began to change a little bit, to Tommy Smiths and Callie's and Emily Hughes and Toshak, and people were phasing, were disappearing. And the younger ones were coming in, not so much Kenny and Graham and that, but some of there was a little bit of a more sort of like schoolboyish sort of attitude towards the Christmas party. Let's make it let's think it up a little bit, make it as fancy dress, and I think like a lot of things. We were kind of trendsetters. I mean, I've never been one for fancy dress, really. I'm a bit sort of shy in that direction. But Liverpool were quite sort of groundbreaking. I think afterwards teams followed, and you said, well, we'll have a fancy dress party. And I mean, our thing was, we had Craig Johnson, and Craig Johnno was big into photography and stuff like that. So so the first fancy dress party was around that time when Johnno had sort of come into the group. So he takes a picture and then sort of then puts it out to the papers, because he was wanting to make a career as a photographer anyway. And then it kind of took off, I mean, it was probably for private consumption in a way.
Yeah.
But it became sort of like, I think it appeared in the Mirror or somewhere like that. I think it was the Mirror. And then from then on in, then people began to follow. We were the first team to sing at winning a cup at Wembley, and everybody sings now. And one thing like that. I mean, Liverpool were very much trendsetters.
Any good outfits you remember some people wearing?
I saw a few novel ones. Some were very clever. So some were very went into the makeup type of direction. Others were people like there was the obvious. I mean, the Batmans and sort of Clint Eastwood type things of the time. They tended people that began to get very innovative as the years moved on. I was coming to it was like 81-ish to I left in 83, so I only took part in a couple of fancy dress ones. Yeah. Then they went a bit. Then they obviously, more the lads began to get a little bit more sort of serious about it, and they were a bit more showy.
Yeah. Well, you're known as the greatest number 12, a super sub. You play behind strikers like Keegan, Toshak, Dalglish, David Johnson, Ian Rush. How frustrating is it to be the one behind them And do you just wish that some of them weren't as good as they were? Because a lot of them are like legends of the club. And obviously, yourself scoring some legendary goals. But would you have swapped to have been in their position, obviously? And how hard was it to try and take their place?
Well, I played nearly 100 games in from the start. And there's been a number of ways of looking at the role that I sort of became known for. Was Paisley used it as a bit of a tactic. Initially, I was grateful to as a young lad, age 18, you're just happy to get any sort of like game time. So it wasn't for a year or two. I could accept a little bit of in and out. After a while, I had my own thoughts about it. The first season, I started the UEFA Cup final as a number 8, which is kind of a nod in my direction. In the games that we had to win away at Manchester City, I was a number 8. So I think there was at times it was a bit of a tactic. Against Bruges in the second leg of the UEFA Cup in '76, having played in the first game. And the game wasn't working well in the first half. We were 2 down at Anfield. And Bob Paisley took Toshak off, brought Jimmy Case on. The next game, the second leg, he starts with Tosh, knowing how they were going to play, but had me as a number 12, and I came on with the direction of now to go on and, as they're tiring a little bit to stretch them and one thing another. So there was quite clearly, I think at times. I've got enough examples to say that Bob Paisley used it as a thing. He would sort of start games in a fashion to bring me on, and in that sense, it was kind of a bit of a sort of, let's say, pioneer of using a number 12. And in me, with me, he had somebody who could play that role because of my pace. I was versatile. I was comfortable on either side. Could score goals. So he couldn't do that with Toshak. For example, it was Tosh. I'm a great fan of Tosh, but he could have brought Tosh on as a sub because Tosh's value was limited. So he could, if you brought John Toshak on, you knew that Liverpool's intent was there now to feed high balls into John Toshak or whatever. Brings me on. You've got a different kind of option. So in some ways, I was unfortunate in that I was versatile, I think. And I've said this in different conversations with people. I said sometimes if you can only play one way, then your career's mapped out to you in a different way. If you're fortunate or unfortunate to be able to play right, left, centre, then you become a little bit expendable in a funny way of looking at the argument. You now you can be seen as sort of multi-purpose, and so in that sense, I don't think it. Sometimes look back and think I was unfortunate to be able to be comfortable, sort of in down the years I played in. I wore 7 shirt, 8 shirt, 9 shirt, 10 and 11. It's kind of there was never any
position.
Position that you're just saying, well, you got to give. People look at football these days differently. The times. And the different thought processes don't exist. Well, they didn't exist. They do now. People sort of say, oh, well, he hasn't played for 4 weeks. He said, can't expect to come on and just turn it on like a tap. Now, for me, for example, I mightn't have played for a month, but then I come on 15 minutes to go against so-and-so, and some comment might be made, oh, looked out of sorts and one thing. There's no, and it's very frustrating, I've found. Obviously I've had to get over it because it happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
But you can, you hear a different type of appreciation of positions these days. People say, "Oh, he hasn't played enough. Hasn't got enough game time. Hasn't got enough in his legs. He can't just he just can't go on and get a chance and score and one thing and another." Yes, I could come on for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, miss a chance, and so I said this time, and some negative comment could be made. I never underestimated my ability, strangely, and of all those players that you kind of named, I never felt inferior to any of them. I never felt that I had ability that, I was quicker than them all. I had an eye for goal. I was natural. I could. So I've never felt. I mean, when people, anybody listens to this might think it's being big-headed and that, but I never felt inferior to anybody. In fact, my unfortunate and something I've not been able to totally let go is I don't think anybody ever really has seen the best of me for long enough. I mean, you could people could pick out games and say, we saw this and we saw that. My thing was that, as they go back to the earlier thing, was being versatile didn't do me any favours at times. And really I should have been given, I always believe I should have been given longer runs.
Chance to play it, yeah. Well, I think even the modern times, again, I think Curtis Jones had a run of 10 games and people went from he shouldn't be playing anymore to, oh, he's a first team player. I think Klopp said at the end of it, that's just because he's played 10 games in a row. Like, they're all this good, you just don't need the chance because the squad's so good, it's so hard to give people 10 games in a row. And I think the goals that you scored, obviously Saint-Étienne's true, it's natural. There's the Everton goal where you're skipping past people. I've seen goals from miles out, top corner. There's a variety of goals, and you say you just needed the chance for a run of games. But if you were in charge and you were going to give yourself that chance, what position would you play in and what would the team be around you?
Well, it would have been either, I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, I started off as a left winger. But I could play down the centre and scored lots of goals. Certainly as a sort of, I mean, if I look at it like in Klopp's times, the way that he used the likes of Mane was a way that I probably would be comfortable with. If you analyse, if you look at certain players' careers, look at John Aldridge as an example. I mean, John was happy to play inside the penalty area, 6-yard box, and tap in. Although I love scoring goals and I scored, hundreds as schoolboy as a goal scorer, I love to be a part of the game. And I heard somebody talk about this the other week about somebody else, about themselves. I want to be involved in the game. You just don't want to be in, just be in the middle knocking goals in. I mean, whilst that can reflect on you in a good way, and you turn around and scored like so many goals and all that. The fun for me for playing football was dribbling, attacking, even making goals for people.
Yeah.
That was the fun of football. It wasn't just tapping a ball in over the line and or slamming it into a net from 6 yards. Okay, counts. But it wasn't my idea of the way I wanted to play football. How you wanted
to be known,
yeah.
So if you were, who was your best strike partner then, who you'd like playing with them as much?
Well, obviously, Kenny was, you'd say Kenny, but for somebody like me, Suey was, a goal springs to mind when he released me against West Ham. I mean, if I like running into space, and that was something I could sort of enjoy because of the pace, and I could outrun most people. So Suey was a great player to springs to mind, but you'd have to say Kenny.
And then just again talking about being on the peripheries of some teams, there were trophies that Liverpool won that you didn't play enough games to get a medal for. There were cup finals where you're on the bench and don't come on.
Yeah.
How is that feeling as like you're part of the squad but maybe not part of the team, if you know what I mean? What is that feeling like? Do you still feel the elation, or is it still feeling like I don't feel fully involved? What's it like?
Well, 81 was a huge disappointment. Being injured and missing out, starting the season. Played the early couple of games in the European Cup run. But by the end, I was injured. So I went to Paris as a fan. I went travelled with the wives and all that type of thing. And that's difficult to be on the fringe. But I'm a Liverpool fan, through and through. So it's great to see the... I would say most of the time I've been happy to see Liverpool win and happy to celebrate, and winning the European Cup in 81 was a bigger thrill as, for anybody. Didn't think of the medal in that time.
Yeah.
One or two occasions down the past after admit to moments where I wanted Liverpool to come unstuck.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Because I wasn't there, and I felt that I should have been. And I thought, well, I hope to get beat today. But it was in a situation that most of the time was maybe the Man United Cup final was the bitterest I've ever felt. Yeah. But the rest of the time, I was always happy for them to win, even though I wasn't there. I'm a Liverpool fan at the end of the day. Yeah. Through and through.
I think people might be shocked by that, whatever. I think it is quite natural for a sportsman, an athlete who wants to get a chance in the team, and maybe you think that one person stopping you, blocking you, you have to have the self-belief that you are as good, if not better, than everyone else in the team. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there, would you? So it obviously is a difficult situation. But the 78 European Cup final, obviously you're playing that. You said you're winning league titles. Those moments must have made it worthwhile when you're looking back on it, saying and I think another thing I've got is the moments to shut the cop. I think your players that shut the cop, you're above. I think I've got it here. John Toshak and someone else. I find it. You're above a couple of other players who maybe played.
The first time they did that, I came out at number 18, and they said to me, where do you think you sort of come out? And I was sort of saying, 30, 40. Yeah. He said, you come in at number 18. Yeah. And I was thinking, it's a huge thing.
So you're above John Toshak and David Johnson. So again, players you were up against, you've finished above in the fans' eyes.
Yeah, it's I became huge friends with Jono, and I was a big fan of Tosh. I used to clean Tosh's boots. So to kind of be linked with them and have the Jono tells a tale that. And I'm often in the company, and I'm thinking, he's saying that he doesn't think anything of the fact that I'm not so much in the room next to him as he's telling this story. I'm thinking, I was the player he was left out for, and I felt I was fully worthy of that role. And so I always found it quite strange. But Jono offered a different type of threat when he was in to me, as did Tosh, but there was no way I ever felt sort of inferior of them or lesser than them. There's certainly lots of things I did that neither of them could do. Yeah,
I don't think you need all those parts of it. It is the modern game where you make 5 subs a game. You all would have changed a lot more. I think to having you to come on at the end, you would have started some and different things. But Saint-Etienne, are you bored of being asked about that goal? I've asked you first.
No, obviously, it's such a part of Liverpool. A lot of Liverpool's people who were around at the time. Yeah. It's a huge part of their memory. I'm very, very fortunate. Very, very fortunate. As I say, I started watching Liverpool in the 60s, and Roger Hunt was my all-time hero. Ian St. John, people like that. And I've got memories of the things that they did and achieved and all that type of stuff. And have lived with me all my lifetime. And there's some people who've seen things that I did. I never thought that that would happen. So the fact that I'm largely, I'm very much remembered for the Saint-Etienne moment. I'm very fortunate to have that, and rarely a day goes by and somebody doesn't mention me in some way. I've just been taking part in something, a look at a cultural thing, and it ultimately gets said. Well, that wasn't the initial idea, but Saint-Etienne plays a big part of what this academic has been doing, and how ultimately it's gone and formed part of what this work that he's putting together. It's amazing. It's an amazing little thing in Liverpool's. The culture of everything, how football changed and all these different things, and the success that Liverpool went on to have on the back of that Saint-Etienne was a key moment in all that. So I'm very, very lucky, and as I say, so many people remember it and sort of tell me their particular little memory. I'm very lucky, very fortunate.
Yeah, I think my dad might kill me if I didn't say that he was outside, locked in the ground, couldn't get in. They were all listening to his radio in the King Harry, and then he got in the last 15 minutes and saw the goal. And amazing, as you say. So many people have spoke to you about it. I always thought to ask you about it because you've said it a million times. But I was watching the game back yesterday, and there's a couple of things that happened after. One was a cross from Kevin Keegan, your back post for the header, just goes over your head. When I play six-a-side, and we were going for a league title, my legs were shaking. How does it feel after you score a massive goal like that? Oh, you're like, oh my God, and you can't believe yourself, or do you still stay focused because you're a lot better than I am?
Well, yeah, you stay focused. Obviously, the job was still in hand. It hadn't been completed. It was 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to this professor who's been doing this paper. And I just said, I thought I should have done better with that cross. He looked at it later and said, I don't think, no, he said, I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself. And one thing. I said, well, no one's harsher on me as a critic than myself.
Yeah.
He said, no, he said, I've looked at that sort of whatever times. So he said, dismiss that out of your mind. But I do remember the moment. But the moment when you get back to the halfway line, because obviously we had the celebration, the big piley on and all that time, and then you get back to all the energy is, your lungs are burning. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that feeling. I've never had it described actually, but your lungs are burning, and you think to yourself, God, it's like 6 minutes to play here. You've got to now. I mean, the crowd become not irrelevant because you hear the noise and stuff like that, but you don't know you're being watched by 50,000 people. You hear the noise, and the noise is a massive part of what pulls you through. So you're not looking at people sitting in the Kemlyn Road stand or whatever. You're not seeing heads, but you are aware of the noise, and the noise gets you. The noise gets you on, and you know that your focus, you've still got a period to play through.
And I think there's 2 opportunities for you and 1 for Steve Highway to put the ball in the corner, and you kept attacking and going inside and crossing.
Oh, really?
And I was just watching it myself, thinking obviously I know what happens, but not even having a go at you. But no one was doing it. So was that because I think what happened in '89 where Steve Vargas and John Barnes saying all that stuff. Was that a tactic to just try and get another one, or do you think you were too excited, or what do you reckon? Do you even remember that?
I think the time wasting thing. I think in our natural sort of style of playing, I don't think was encouraged by Moran, Ronnie Moran, Joe Fagan and stuff like that. So like time waste. Okay, slow things down a little bit, stay in control of the ball, but not. There would never have been I can't ever remember sort of the likes of Ronnie particularly, because Ronnie's voice was always the big one of sort of saying run it in the box and keep it in the things can go can go wrong like in '89. It wasn't the natural thing to do. So I think it was just a case
it
of...
felt like, because like I was saying, I was watching it from a modern perspective of if you watch like that the Newcastle final and that, no abuse them in any way, they were right to do it. But if you saw that now, you and Steve I would take a quick corner and I'm like, right, you're just going to keep the ball, and you start dribbling out and you pass it Jimmy Case, oh my God, what are you doing? I couldn't believe watching it. But to say, it was good for you. If you just scored another one, maybe it would have been good.
I haven't seen, I've never... God, I haven't seen it for a long, long time. I've seen the goal. Goal keeps popping up, and see Clem's save towards the end that he makes over to the right hand side. There's a move. The Saint-Etienne players want to come over to the ground. They want to. This has come from this paper that this guy has been documented. He's been putting together. Out of it has come this link again. With Saint-Etienne, and the players want to come over, and so I think something's going to happen next year.
Yeah,
I think.
That'd be good.
I think there's more of them living than us, unfortunately.
Yeah,
maybe it's because of the Mediterranean lifestyle, but it's nice that it's such a big part of their. It's such a big part of their history.
Yeah,
Liverpool.
Well, we had Gregory Vignelin, which obviously played for Liverpool in like the 2000s, and he even said when he moved to Liverpool, his dad said, "Oh, I remember the Saint-Etienne games." You know, it's so overarching, and any European night under the lights, they'll go, "You remember the night like Saint-Etienne?" and that's the start of the list. So, as you say, it's a moment that will long outlive any player in that team, outlive myself, everyone. I think it's going to be always held up there, and you know, you've spoke about it so much, but for you to be at the centre of that must be amazing. At full time, you just run off the pitch. I read the story that you poked your head in the pub that you used to have a pint in with the reserve players.
Well, looked over the road. I pulled up. I pulled up in my car. Me and my mate, the Bulldog in West Derby, and that was our little local lads I used to knock around with, the reserve lads, Jeff Ainsworth and a few people. And we pulled up. We said my mum and dad had gone home, and I was in my car. we said, should we go to Bulldog? We'll go with the Bully for one. So I drove down to the Bulldog and stopped, and then just looked over, and it was like it was packed. It was absolutely rammed, and it was like looked around, watch. It was about like 10:25, and the old manager was a bit of a stickler for the time. He was an old former policeman, Ted. And we said, Ted will be ringing the bell any minute, so we probably won't get to the bar. You could see how busy it was. So should we leave it? My mate said, yeah, we'll leave it. So come on. So I went home, and he lived next door but one to me in Canny, and just drove home, and then got home 10:30ish. I was only about 5 minutes away. So I get home to Canny Farm, park up. See you tomorrow, Ben. Bernie. So off he goes. I go in and watch the highlights were coming on Granada. Yeah, and watched it with my mum and dad. Yeah. So maybe if I'd have gone to the pub, I wouldn't have watched that. I wouldn't have had that moment with my mum and dad.
I suppose. Would have been a great pint that though, I reckon. I reckon you might have got a bit of a welcome.
Would have been interesting, wouldn't it? Would I have got to the bar? It was. I
reckon someone might have bought you a pint.
Might have done. Yeah, but no, it was rammed, and so it was a good. And I haven't said that. I mean, I was going to be playing on the Saturday.
Yeah,
it was Wednesday, so we were playing Middlesbrough on the Saturday. So, and I was in training next day, so it would have only been a pint, and it could have all might have got a bit messy and all that type of stuff.
It was the right thing, but I think Joey Jones had the saying that it was muted after. It's just back to business.
Yeah.
How hard is it from playing like a night game or just a game in general to come home to a quiet house? Like, is it like jarring to have that adrenaline rush and then just come in and make your tea or whatever's going on?
I think in years gone by, I've kind of been more aware of feeling, sort of high on, maybe, like the Chelsea game when Liverpool, qualified for European Cup games, like the Chelsea and the game. Some of those games have made me more aware of thinking I'm still, the adrenaline's still sort of going. Whereas when I played, certainly the Saint-Etienne thing. We watched I remember that night watching the highlights, mum and dad, and then my dad was falling asleep. Not so much in the game, after the game was on, and my mum says, "Oh yeah, Tommy, go to bed." So my dad goes off to bed because he was up early for work. I just sat up with my mum, just talking and one thing. I wasn't aware that it was adrenaline as such.
Yeah.
Not making me sleep. I was able to take kind of. I can probably say it now, but I think I used to take things quite sort of in my stride. I never really got sort of too sort of wound up about it.
Yeah.
And maybe that was why perhaps one or two things happened the way that they did.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you spoke about your Liverpool stuff so much, and I just went to the end of it. And we're going to look at some of the other clubs after quickly. But as you say, you had those moments. You're a fantastic player, but you're maybe not getting the game time that you want, and you certainly feel you deserve. Was it a really hard decision to leave Liverpool, and was it coming for a while, and you just needed the guts to do it? Maybe. Or...
I think the when I got my injury and the attitude towards Russia emerged as I'm getting back to fitness and stuff. Russia had signed from Chester, so we were giving them a few opportunities. And I just sensed that Paisley's kind of thing to me wasn't quite as pro me as it had been before, and it's very very much a Liverpool thing. As maybe, let's say, Van Dijk did his ACL. I mean, he wasn't the player. He wasn't the player, that we'd seen initially in the 6 months afterwards.
Yeah.
But the club stick with you, and you work it through. In those days, they didn't. Paisley wanted it, and he wanted it. You want it, and you want it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't a case of saying, "Oh, we'll help you work through it, and in you'll be all right in 3 months' time, and we'll give you some games and da 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 da." Those days, it was. We want it. We want it, and we want it now.
Yeah.
And then that's how a little bit of an indication, I think, of how life has changed. So I felt as if I wasn't being judged in the way that I'd been previously, and there was kind of and you pick up on a little bit of negativity. You think, you know what? He doesn't think I'm kind of maybe as quick as I was, and I was probably that's fair to say. Because the recuperation in those days was useless. The rehab was, it was archaic. So, it's not like you've got a dynamic sort of remedial equipment that gets your legs moving in the way that they once were. In those days, it was very slow. Everything can tend to be a little bit sort of, as I say, it's a bit like. Think back to the days of the Second World War, jumping on boxes and pulling. I can remember using this pulley to full of sand. In a tub of like an old margarine. Think of an old margarine tub full of sand on a string, and that's your exercise to get you over this knee injury.
Yeah.
So it was kind of obvious that you were never going to get back to that quick, and I picked up on the vibe that it wasn't sort of going like the way that it used to be, and the way maybe I'd liked it to have gone. With that in mind, Paisley came to me one day and he said, "How would you fancy, Rod? The season was coming to an end. I wasn't playing in the first team; I was playing in the reserves." And he said, "How would you fancy playing away in the summer, going away and?" While people have the holiday and all that type of thing, you go away in the summer. I said, yeah, I kind of fancy that. It's a good idea, no point in sort of like being sat up for weeks on end at home. And then, so I thought, yeah, okay, well, where's the options? And one of the options was to go to the North American Soccer League. I went over there and had an interesting summer. It was good. Some good opportunities to get fit again. Great training. And at the end of it, Liverpool, I had a conversation with Bob Paisley on the phone, and I got there into thought, he's prepared to let me stay here, and I'm thinking, it's not the same.
Yeah.
It was clearer now. I've had this summer away, and he's sort of saying, well, do you want to stay there? And I'm thinking, not like, come on, when are you getting back?
Yeah.
As you want to hear. And that really put it into my mind. I'm thinking, it's over. That moment, and I remember the conversation. I could tell you now where I was standing, and I remember having the conversation thinking, it's over. Yeah. Liverpool's not but I was determined to go back and give it a go. Came back, played a bit of a part in the 82-83 season. Came back, and the first game he threw me on a sub against Norwich in the League Cup. Came on and scored, and thought, you know what? In my eyes, I was kind of saying, well, that's showing you kind of thing what I can do. Yeah. But the season was a little bit. They'd bought David Hodgson, so now I'm not only competing. I've had the thing of competing with obviously Kenny and Rushy becoming a thing. But now I'm competing with David Hodgson, and I wasn't his signing. He wasn't Bob Paisley's signing, David Hodgson. I later found out. There were just a few things that were just not really sort of feeling right.
Yeah.
So I kind of thinking the love, the love began to sort of, I think, you know what? I think it's time for a change.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Kind of thing. So it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would. As I thought years earlier.
Yeah, it would have
been. It
been.
really would have been. And at that point, then you start sort of. He said Bob Paisley says he's retiring, and he said I won't be the manager, but I said I'll give every. And that didn't convince me that the next year was going to be any sort of. Had I known now, which strangely, and I've never really thought that much of it. If I'd known that they were going to sell David Hodgson that summer, and they were going to sign Michael Nimble, then they were going to look for another one, and they ended up signing Michael Robinson, I probably would have stayed, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah.
I could have been convinced to stay if I'd have known the Hodgson was disappearing. But I went and enjoyed it, and but it wasn't that difficult to leave, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Yes, the time was right.
It felt right. Yeah, it was the right time.
Well, obviously, just touching on some of those clubs, you said the North American Soccer League with Toronto Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
Is this where you played against players like Wim Serbier, the defender?
Yeah, well, I played against Serbier when we played Feyenoord.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
For Liverpool.
And Johan Neeskens was at Cosmos at that
time. Neeskens, obviously he'd been. Yeah, I played against Neeskens against Cosmos. I remember talking to Neeskens and him saying, I was playing outside left midfield, and he said, when you run, he said, I'm not going to run after you down, because he was playing down the right and I'm playing down the left. I had to chase back because that was our style, but he didn't. He had no intention of racing the other way with me when I was going. Yeah, that was a Johan Neeskens moment. Obviously, he played for Barcelona, hadn't he, in '76 as well.
So you say there's some. It's a bit like it is today, I suppose, where there was big names there trying to build the sport. Yeah. What was it like playing in there? Were the pitches good? Were the referees good? Were the stadiums good? The crowds? What was it like?
So I heard this the other day. Somebody was talking about America. It's still the you never know what time. Well, you do know, but every pitch is different every week. It could be AstroTurf, it could be half AstroTurf, it could be natural grass, it could be shit. The pitches were like really surprising. I mean, I played on Toronto, didn't realise. I mean, Toronto was harder than this surface now I'm standing on. It was like playing on the road outside. It was like concrete, but it had a green cover on. Very difficult. But you go to some places, played in Chicago, played New York. I mean, they were on beautiful AstroTurf in New York. But you go to play on grass at San Diego or Florida. And so it was every experience was kind of different.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the overall summer. It was a great insight, and it was a great opportunity to see the States.
Yeah,
I'd never been to America before.
And you got sent off in one game as well.
I got sent off in a friendly against Juventus.
Yeah, what was that for?
Yeah, for like nothing. One of the funny things about Toronto at that time, it had the biggest population of Italians outside of Rome, and so we get, maybe for our games we get 15,000, 12,000. We had this friendly against Juve. They got Juve over there for a mid-summer break thing. Yeah. 55,000 Italians in the place. The place was going berserk. The referee was an Italian, and I'm in this little as a corner with Brio, big defender, and he's giving me all sorts as Italians do, and I sort of like prodded him, and the referee turns around and sends me off for a violent. Well, the Italians loved it in the crowd; it was unbelievable. In my eyes, I'd done next to nothing. I mean, the injustice was well. The violence had come from the other side, to be honest with you. I'm just sort of knocking him. The referee's like, when he decides to look over and sees me sort of like giving him a bit of a prod, I get sent off. There's a picture somewhere, and I'm standing there, I'm saying, like, what have I done? But it was Italian bias, and that's why I put it down to.
Yeah, that's right. And then I think Switzerland follows, is that right?
Well, it's Switzerland. There'd been some interest from English clubs.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to Man City. Actually, I thought I'd had a conversation with Tony Book, and I'd negotiated a free with Liverpool. So I spoke to Tony Book. It looked like I was going to go to Man City. I said, "Well, I'm going on holiday tomorrow. Speak to you when I get back." Went on holiday. I was in Spain, and I was contacted by an agent, an Austrian guy. And he said there was some interest from Switzerland. And then at that point, I went off to Switzerland. I went and had a chat with them, and terms were incredible. I mean, nobody in England was on the contract that I was being offered to go to Lucerne. So I went to Switzerland, had 2 years of Switzerland, a couple of little things. There was a little period in between my Switzerland, I'd left Switzerland, realised made a mistake here. Coming out of Switzerland was getting caught up in a little bit of homesickness type of thing.
Yeah.
I went to Belgium, and in about the second year of being in Belgium, first year in Belgium was excellent. We were in the UEFA Cup. We qualified for the UEFA Cup the following season. And next season, towards the end, it was getting a little bit, as things happen. All of a sudden, they get an offer for me. They sign me on a sort of a personal deal, effectively free. But they got an offer of 50,000 for me, to 52,000 to go to Bastia in Corsica. So I'd come home from thinking like I'm on my break now. Summer was over, second season was over, but as far as I'd left Belgium, Beveren for the summer, thinking I'm going back in 3 weeks' time, and back to normality. And I got a phone call when I'm home. And it was like my mum lived in West Derby Village, and got this phone call, and they said, "You've been sold." Sold? It's like to who? So we had this offer from whatever, CF Bastia or something. And I said, SC Bastia. I said, where's Bastia? Didn't even know where Bastia was. So they said, no, you've been sold, whatever. You've got to fly to Corsica, or fly to Bastia. Find out it's Corsica. You know. So we found out. So I went to Corsica, and so it's the deal in their eyes, in Belgium, deal's done. I haven't agreed to it and all. It's all done. I mean, when you get over there, you're meeting this agent. So get over there. Agents involved and all this. We get involved in some discussions and things like this. They had a game against somebody, and I'm playing in the game. Like, I was thinking, geez, you know, it's weird how it's all done.
Yeah.
So I'm now going to play for Bastia in this game. And in Beveren's eyes, they've sold me for 50 grand. Haven't got me for, you know, less. They made a profit on me out of me a couple of years, so I'm sold. So we're having discussions, and nobody, I don't know if you've been to Corsica, but nobody speaks English in Corsica. Nobody speaks English. And my wife, and we had little fella, and Tom's only, I think Tom was about 18 months, and I'm away. I'm doing training, and I'm doing some training with them, some pre-season training. Even though I hadn't signed yet, I've got to do this pre-season training because their season started earlier. So I've got to do this training, and negotiating with them. In the meantime, my wife's running around with this little fella, and he's driving her mad. And I'm coming back to the hotel in the evening. My wife's saying, I can't stay. He's mad. He's driving me nuts. He's like, you know, he's a rocket. Like, oh, Tom, like, and nobody speaks English. She's frustrated like mad. And I said, well, the contract's very good actually. The contract was great. He said, I'm not signing. He said, I'm not staying here. I said, whatever. So I went back and said, no, they're not. My wife won't stay. Whatever. It kept improving the offer. The offer's brilliant, to be honest with you. So, so my wife won't stay. My wife will not stay here in Corsica. I can't do that. I've got a little boy. So the president goes nuts and says, whatever. Pencils flying in the air. And I said, well, I'm not signing. That's it. They said, all right. He said, okay. He said, we don't pay for the hotel. We don't pay for your flights. We don't pay for nothing. Oh, I'm going to give you all this. So I'm thinking, so I'm going back to the hotel. I go back to the hotel. I said to Jan, I said, okay, I've told them. I said, but they're not going to pay for the hotel. We've got to pay for all this hotel. Got to pay for the flights. Got to pay for all the bits and pieces. We'd lost I'd given up a holiday to go on this thing because I'd had a summer holiday booked. So what are we going to do? The only way is we're going to have to make a run for it. So we had to plan and made a run for it. And I mean, that's just part of it. It was like quite dramatic, actually, quite scary. I got to the airport, I kept thinking, I'm going to get my collar felt here. We're sitting in the airport waiting to come home. So I went home. Beveren were furious. They were like, you know, I've lost them all this money that they could have done with.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm coming back. So I've still got a contract. I said, I'm coming back next week. Played out me little break in West Derby. Went back to Belgium. Had another year in Belgium. Yeah.
It's been a bit tense, that one. Yeah.
It's a good tale, to be honest with you, how we did it. I mean, I can still see it now, sneaking out the hotel, filling the car up, and geez, it was weird. And then Dave Prentice from the Echo. I spoke to Dave yesterday, actually. He's not with the Echo, he works for Everton.
Yeah.
And Dave rings me up one day. And he was a follower of it. He used to do this foreign correspondence stuff for the Echo, Pink Echo. And he rings up. He says, "Why are you on the team picture for SC Bastia?" I'm thinking, yeah, because on that night they had the game done. Yeah. I'm on the team picture, and that was the official picture for Bastia for that season, with me standing in the background. It was the
chairman probably threw a few darts at that picture, probably. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I don't know. He was a bit. If you've ever been to KOP'S, it's quite an intimidating kind of. In a certain way, in certain ways, it's quite an intimidating place.
Yeah,
it was mad. It was a mad. It was a tough, strange week because I was kind of enjoying it in a way. I was enjoying the training. Climate was a bit too hot for me, really being a redhead. My wife was on the beach every day, but with the little fella, Tom. And the thing, we learned what's she going to do? All every day, and they just said first, "You can go to the beach. You can go to the beach." She said, "I cannot go to the beach every day with little rocket of a son who was like flying all over the place." It was funny.
Well, as you say, there's a few moves that followed, quite a few different countries as well. Was it a deliberate action that you left Liverpool and you thought, "I want to go far away," or was it just these opportunities came your way and that's what it was?
No, I think the day that I'd sort of, or the days that I'd following, I'd agreed with Liverpool I was going to leave. I had a lot of interest from clubs abroad, but the one that really appealed to me was Man City. I really thought I was going to go to Man City. I was talking to Tony Book. City had chased me a couple of times, and it really suited me. The idea of going to City, could have stayed living where I was living, just gone down the road. Everything was lined up, and it wasn't until, I say, the agent showed me, and we flew over to Switzerland, me and my wife. Went over there. It was fantastic. It really was fantastic.
Yeah.
And it had never really been in my thoughts to leave Liverpool and go abroad as such. I mean, it'd been rumoured down the years that a couple of teams had showed interest in me. Anderlecht had showed interest in me a few years earlier, after we'd played them in the Super Cup, and they were interested. But really, I'd never Harvard. You think Italy, Spain, all that. Well, am I suited to playing in Italy and Spain? And it wasn't. It was times of Maradona and one thing another. It was like high level stuff. Some big stars were in Italy. Didn't think it was going to happen for me to go to Italy. So Switzerland came out the blue, and the thought of going abroad became very attractive once I'd seen what the place was like. Beautiful lifestyle,
Yeah. Okay, and then obviously you come back to England, play for a few different clubs. I think is it Oldham where you make your Anfield return?
I played for Oldham in the middle of between Switzerland and Belgium. I played for Oldham.
Yeah.
And there's a story how I got involved in there, because I was living in West Derby. Mick Quinn contacted me and said, "Oh, manager wants to speak to you," and one thing and another. Do you fancy coming to Oldham? So I signed for Oldham. It was a funny year, wasn't the? And I really only got to the bottom of it when I was leaving, because I had a year. And Joe said to me at the end of the season, he said he thought he was going to sell Quinny. Quinny and Ron Butcher were playing up front. And he said that he thought he was going to sell Quinny and he would have a ready-made replacement with me.
Yeah.
Didn't sell Quinny, as it happened. Not as early. And so I had a very frustrating year being at Oldham. I think, what am I, travelling up to Oldham every day. We got Liverpool in the League Cup, yeah. And I was talking to Mark Lawson the other day. He doesn't remember it. I said, "I got a picture of you. He's in this picture as I'm scoring my second against Liverpool. I scored 2.
Yeah.
He didn't know memory. I said, "It's a big memory of me."
Because I think I was looking, you come off the bench at Anfield and it goes to a replay and you score. It was twice
Second
you scored.
game.
Yeah, you scored twice in the replay. Yeah. So was
game.
that because you said obviously you had the love for Liverpool as a fan, but maybe you'd come a bit disassociated at the end of your career as a player. So was it a feeling of how you shouldn't have got rid of me, or was it just you doing your job?
No, brilliant. Yeah, just doing my job. Yeah, just fine. It was a great thrill. Obviously, come on and play at Anfield was good for the last 15 minutes or whatever. It was great. enjoyed that and experienced what it was like to be, an opposition player in Anfield. We come under pressure in those minutes. They won 3-0, didn't they? So that was good to do. And then the second game, because League Cup in the first round was always 2 legs.
Sorry, yeah.
So just doing the job, and it meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
It was Liverpool's double year. There was only 2 players that year scored 2 goals against Liverpool. And I think, as I was saying to Laura, I'm not sure it was McAvenny or Cotty, but it was one of them two, and me. The only players to score 2 goals against them in that season. So it was a big kind of a little feather in my cap, actually. I enjoyed it.
And a good reception when you went back to Anfield.
Yeah, good. It's good. Yeah.
Right, so, well, obviously, we've gone through your career there. Just want to reflect on maybe what your legacy is within the game as well. I wrote a book about Billy Liddell, and one of his last public appearances with the KOP'S last stand, 1994.
Oh, yeah.
You were one of the players on the pitch then, and you're looking at the names who were on there. I think Alan Stubbins, Billy Liddell, Nessie Shankly, Jesse Paisley, and there's Kenny, all players like that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of players, but again, to be in that select group of the legends of the KOP, does that show you how highly you were thought of at the club? And do you remember that day and what that was like meeting those people?
Oh God, yeah. We were walking on. It was amazing. Maybe I put it down to being a bit lucky being around the club at that time, and I was said, you should be. I always thought that they mishandled that. They should have had a parade of, the other day, Coventry, for example, they had 400 ex-players, sort of Liverpool could have quite easily contacted every Liverpool player, ex-player, and said, be there, and you could have just walked around the outside of the pitch. Would have been fitting and fantastic. And instead, Liverpool's ad hoc, really, really, and I was very lucky to be in that group, obviously. Yeah. Billy Liddell was there, and I'd got to know Billy Liddell down the years. Amazing, fantastic, yeah.
But I said you just for players made more appearances than you, won more trophies than you, but your legacy remains so strong. As again, we were talking about the players that shook the KOP, all stuff like that. So, do you feel like you're remembered in the right way by Liverpool fans and Liverpool Football Club, and are they the same or different things?
I'm delighted to, it's more than I could ever have wished for to have played for Liverpool, but to be remembered is amazing. The people who played for Liverpool down the years, it's 1,000 or more, isn't it? And to think that that people remember parts that you played in it, I think I can only be thankful for that. I don't take it for granted, and I was born and brought up a few hundred yards away from Anfield. It's a great thing for I think you mentioned it earlier. Liverpool, will be remembered for however 100 years and one thing or another. And to think that you got a little piece of a history is probably more than you could ever. You couldn't make it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could say, I'm going to do this, and you can only dream about it, really. And to do it, I don't take it for granted. If anybody remembers me and one thing or another, then it's a bonus.
Yeah. Well, certainly done well. There's so many stories, so many we didn't speak about, so many that you've spoken about so much before, but to go through your career was amazing. What do you think about football now? Do you enjoy it now? Do you like your involvement within the game, or how are you feeling now with yourself, with the relationship?
Well, I'm
with football?
very lucky, and we've said this amongst ourselves. A couple of the lads, Neely, who I'm close with, to think that I come a different path. I grew up in Liverpool, one thing or another, dreamt of playing for Liverpool, but to still be involved and asked by Liverpool to still come along and do things. The way things are done these days, you can't expect that to be the way. But the fact that Liverpool still invite you on things, I went to the cup final the other week. I'm on a committee that involves the the ex-players. the involvement the ex-players are in this committee, and I'm as one of the representatives, is it's very flattering, and so I don't take anything for granted, and I'm just sort of at times I think we say Liverpool don't have to do this, I mean, it might be some people in certain parts of the country might think, well, that's the thing what they should do, but they don't have the thing, they don't have to do these things. So to remain involved and to be asked to be involved in these things, I'm very I'm very grateful of, and I'm flattered.
Yeah, well, I'm very grateful and flattered that you came here today, and I really appreciate it. So that's the end of our chat, if that's okay. Is there anything that you're doing at the moment that you want people to have a look at or follow, or just... No,
I'm living in the... I'm living on a quiet one.
Nice to step back. That's good. Well, I appreciate you coming in. I really do appreciate that. I hope you've enjoyed listening to the stories. And thank you for watching or listening on the Football Historian Podcast.
Locking eyes from across the room, heart is pounding. What have I have to lose? This kind of feeling tends to blur your sight. Is it love that we
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.